Welcome everybody to tonight's JUMPinar. Just give us a few minutes to let everybody join and we'll get started. Welcome everybody to tonight's JUMPinar. Just give us a few more minutes to let people join and we'll get started. Okay, so it's 7:03 and we'll go ahead and get started tonight. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight for the JUMPinar on finding and keeping great tenants with our Philly office retail's very own Joanne Ford. Before we get into the presentation, Angie's not here with us tonight, but Adriana is taking her spot and going to give us some updates on the loan program.
Yes, so Jumpstart Philly and Jumpstart Germantown are accepting loan applications, and you can find out more by visiting jumpstartgermantown.com and jumpstartphilly.com. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Adriana. If this is your first time joining us at one of our JUMPinars, we're just going to quickly go through how to submit questions. On the toolbar at the bottom, you'll see a little Q&A bubble, like two chat bubbles next to each other. You have a question for Joanne or really anything, you can submit it in there and we'll get to it when it comes up or save it for the end if we're moving along. But yeah, we're not going to have the chat open, so direct all your questions to the Q&A. And while your question's being answered, I will unmute or allow you to unmute your microphone in case you want to follow up or clarify anything. So be on the lookout for that as well. But without further ado, tonight we have Joanne Ford. And let me get this up real quick. Joanne has been...
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, let me introduce you real quick. I was just finding the email. Uh,
Okay, cool.
Jawan has been with Philly Office Retail, and her primary role is marketing and leasing of POR properties. In addition to this, she has served as a project manager on the design of POR and Jumpstart Germantown websites. As a lifelong resident of Philadelphia, Jawan has been a licensed PA realtor for over 10 years and is in the process of completing her first Jumpstart project, like many of you attending probably.
Yes.
So yeah, Jawan, if you want to take it away, and we'll get to the questions when they come up.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm not going to talk long because I want to really set aside time for questions and answers to hear what everyone is thinking, what they're doing, and sort of try to, the whole purpose of this group is to feed off each other and bring more ideas. So I want to do that. So as Derek mentioned, I do leasing of commercial and residential properties for Philly Office Retail. And I've been doing so for a little over 3 years. I'm not, and Derek, you know what? I should have asked that. Can we see if anyone is doing commercial? Can we do a quick poll to see or is it too late?
I think it's too late.
All right, that's fine. No worries. So I'll just touch on both. So yes, so I do commercial and residential for Philly Office Retail. I'll touch briefly on commercial just because I know a lot of times most people are doing residential. So with the commercial properties, what I do is I advertise on LoopNet, which is a great resource. It's easy and it's accessible for the everyday person looking to, find a storefront, find a restaurant space. And you don't, it's free. There is an option that you have to pay for, but to just generally do a search, LoopNet is free. So that's a great tool to use. So I advertise on LoopNet. I do also do signage on the properties, depending on where the property is and the sort of aesthetics of the property. I'll do window signs or window clings. That's a new thing that we've been doing. I'll do banners as well. And also what I do is Craigslist. I tell people all the time, like they sort of frown upon Craigslist, but Craigslist can actually be your friend. Craigslist is a great resource, and the more you use it, the more you'll be able to wean out the good and bad on Craigslist, because trust me, there is both on Craigslist. On the residential side, I list properties on Zillow, and once I list it on Zillow, it sort of feeds out to the other websites, to the Trulia. There's another one that it feeds out to, Hotwire or hot something, not Hotwire. But it's another one. It feeds it out to maybe like three or four different sites that individuals looking to purchase individuals looking to rent apartments on. One thing that I did want to mention about commercial, I made a note so I wouldn't forget. I forget to mention this during Jumpstart, and I hope there's no brokers on the call. There might be. It's fine. I'm apologize ahead of time. I am also I'm a licensed PA realtor, so it's like I could hurt myself anyway. But what I'm trying to say is that for commercial properties, as an individual, you don't necessarily need to hire a broker if you're or a realtor if you are just looking for a storefront. So, or you as the owner of the commercial property, you don't necessarily need to hire a realtor to list the property for you, because it's something that you can do on yourself. And commercial real estate, as you know, is different from residential real estate. So you can list it yourself, and then once you get down to the leasing option, or when you finally have the lease in front of you, if you want to negotiate that with a lawyer, then you can do that. But you necessarily do not have to have a broker or a realtor to find your commercial properties. I would say 90% of the commercial properties that we lease come from individuals who just search Craigslist or search LoopNet or one of the other options. Some of them do come along with brokers, but again, I would say probably 90 to 95% you do it on their own. So getting to you have a property, you listed the property, you market the property, open house. Open houses are a great thing. So usually if we, on a commercial side, if there's a new hot commercial product that we've had in a great area that's going to attract a lot of attention, what I'll do is I'll set up an open house for the community. I did that when we were doing Wayne Junction. When we began to lease that, I opened up a community open house. So it made the neighbors feel really good and also had their input on suggestions on, what we could possibly do to the property. And also if they knew anyone that was interested in moving. Neighbors can help you that way also with residential. I know sometimes, we are afraid of newsy neighbors, but those newsy neighbors can actually turn around and be your friend because one, they'll look out for your properties while you're in the process of doing your renovations and everything. And they can also potentially help you find tenants as well on the commercial side and on the residential side. So don't be afraid to talk to the neighbors while you're doing that. So you have an open house, but residential is a little bit different. I don't necessarily do open houses just because I found, and this is just me, I found that they're not as effective. So what I will do is I'll schedule multiple showings at one time. So I list a property and I get calls from multiple people to say they want to come on Friday after work. So I get 2 or 3 calls saying, I can come on Friday at 5 o'clock. So what I'll do is anyone else that calls, I'll say, all right, Friday from 5 to 6, and I only do an hour. Friday from 5 to 6, I'll be at the property. Feel free to come by during that time and see it. It can most times work in your favor. Sometimes people get turned off by seeing a lot of people at the apartment and they'll say, well, you know what? There's so many people here, I'm not even going to apply for this unit because it doesn't make sense to apply because all these people, I won't get it. That's not true because out of maybe 10 people that show up for this showing, maybe 5 or 6 of them are only follow through with the application. And then out of that 5 or 6, maybe 1, maybe 2 is, like we would say, a well-qualified tenant, meaning they have the income, which is for residential, we look to have at least 3 times your monthly income, 3 times what your monthly pay that you bring in. You have the good credit as well. Because out of those 5, we only might have 1 that meets all of that criteria. So I tell everyone, don't get discouraged, still apply. And another thing that people really appreciate is that you calling them back. Always call everyone back. I pride myself on getting an email from someone and then I call them, I'm happen to be at my desk and I call right away or I respond right away. They're like, oh my goodness, I literally just, sent that email. And I'm like, I know that's one of the advantages that we have at Philly Office Retail. I am on it as far as if it's an email, if it's a phone call, if it's an inquiry from our website, I make sure to respond to everyone right away. So people do appreciate it. And people will tell you like, oh my goodness, I called 5 or 6 different places and no one has called me back. So they'll just come out to see it just because you called back. So make sure you do that. And then make sure you're honest with everyone. If you're running an application for someone and you see their credit is not favorable, just tell them that, unfortunately, we have to decline your application due to your credit history. Now, some people will fight you on that. And when I say fight you, they'll come back and say, well, no, my credit history is XYZ. I just pulled my Credit Karma account, and my Credit Karma account showed I had this. Well, can I just use my own credit report to give you? And we don't do that. Occasionally there has been times when there's been some discrepancies. We've researched further just because things weren't lining up. But for the most part, we use a system called AppFolio, which is on the larger scale. It's like a project management for tenant system that's like on a larger scale. So that's what we use for our tenants. But there's smaller programs that are out there when you're just getting started that you can use as well. So while they're in their showing, while they're there showing, take the time to talk to individuals and see what's their game plan. Why are they moving to this neighborhood? Is it because they have family in the area, they work in the area, or ideally you're talking, and ideally you want to get someone that's going to be a long-term tenant. That is your goal. So when you get their applications and it says that they live at this place for 6 months, they lived at this place for 7 months, then the place to live there, they only lived there for a year. That's the one that sort of jumps around, and ideally that's not the type of tenant that you want to have. Ideally you want to have a long-term tenant. So talk to them, see what their motive is for moving, and why they want to why they want this unit. Now with COVID-19 going on, we take extra precautions. When COVID first started, Pennsylvania was one of the few states that did not allow in-person showing. So basically all real estate, everything was shutting down. So I had to get creative because we still had properties out there, and I started noticing in the beginning, it was a trend for a need for more residential. So what I would do is I would go into the properties by myself, and then I would schedule do virtual showings and have individual, and then send them out. So if I list a property on Zillow, I would email the person and say, if someone contacted me and say, hey, yes, I'm interested in this property, can I see it? Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, I can't show properties, but I can send you the virtual video of the property. And I would say I leased about 3 properties that way. There were individuals that said, well, I want to see it in person. Well, I can't show it to you in person, so this is the only option that we have. So I lost a couple that way, but again, like I said, it was great. I was able to secure 3 leases that way. And what I did for no contact showings, no contact exchanges, I would do a walkthrough of the unit beforehand, right before they were to get their keys, show them the unit, and then also put the keys in the lockbox and give them the lockbox code. So they are able to get the keys themselves. They had to make their payments and everything online so that it was strictly no contact. Safety is always first. And even now when I'm doing showings, if someone doesn't have a mask, it's been sometimes I'm like, I can't show you the unit without a mask. If you don't have a mask on, please, I need you to wear a mask. There has been a couple times where I've told the individuals, okay, you go in, I'm going to wait out here. Because like I said, that's very important, and safety becomes first. So make sure that you are protecting yourself as well when doing so. Okay, so we have the application, we've reviewed the credit history, it looks good. We don't charge, Philly Office Retail does not charge individuals for applications. And people are surprised about that. We don't have an application fee. And part of the reasons for that is to get more people to apply. And it sort of works in our favor. We'll get multiple applications, especially if it's a hot property. By hot property, I mean it's in a great location, it's priced accurately. So we usually don't have a problem getting multiple applications. It's just the fact of getting that one good application. If we get two, then great, but definitely want to make sure we get one. And then select your tenant. Like I said, we like to have at least 3 times your monthly income, is at least 3 times what your rent will be. So that's the first thing that I look at. So if I notice that the monthly income is low, I will call them and tell them that I'm not even going to run your credit because I noticed that your monthly income is low. So I'm going to save you that inquiry on your credit. People, ask me like, oh my goodness, is it going to affect my credit? Every time you run your credit, it affects your credit. It just depends on if it's a hard or a soft entry. If it's, but yes, it does affect your credit every time your credit is ran. And what I know from doing residential real estate sales is that a lot of times people shop around for mortgages, which is fine. It's great to do. If you are shopping around for a mortgage in the same time period, say like, I think it might be in the same 30 days and you try 1 or 2 or 3, I wouldn't do any more than 3 mortgage companies to see who you want to work with best. It won't affect your score as it would if you apply for a mortgage in March, then you apply again in April, then you apply again in July. That sort of thing sort of hurts your credit in the long run. On the residential side, I'm jumping around a little bit, but on the residential side, what I learned is everyone that sends me an email, first thing I say to them is, thank you so much for your email. What type of business are you looking to place at this location? And a lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes people get offended by that, or they question, well, why are you asking me where do I, what type of business that I have? Well, I'm asking you for 1 or 2 reasons. One, I want to make sure that the business can actually fit at that location. Majority of my calls are for, right now, it's for home healthcare agencies, it's for daycares. Oh, I'm sorry, it's for event spaces, home healthcare agencies, and then daycare centers. Well, daycare centers can't fit in every space. And where some people might, we're not going to, because we have multiple daycare tenants, so we sort of know the process for daycare, a little bit. So we're not going to lease a daycare to a space that's 1,500 square feet and there's no yard space, because ideally it's not going to be profitable for you to do, and it will hurt us in the long run. So, we won't even consider a tenant like that. So I need to know that first, what type of business it is, to see if the business will actually fit. We have a couple properties that are in, have a zoning overlay. So meaning no more of those businesses can go in this location. Meaning no more hair salons, specifically on 100 block of Germantown. No more hair salons, no daycare centers, no cell phone places, no barbershop, no beauty supply, anything can go on this 100. So I need to know that. So I'm like, well, unfortunately, there's a zoning overlay and that business cannot go there. The other reason is we are very in tune with the communities to which we have our properties. Sometimes we get multiple calls for a certain business, and I'll say this, at one point we were getting multiple calls for a certain business, and we took it to, I personally thought that the business would not work for anything that we do. But we took it to Facebook and asked the community. We went on one of the community groups and asked, would you like XY? What do you feel about XYZ business coming into your community? And the response was just as I thought, overwhelmingly no. So now I know. So now if someone calls about that business, I just tell them, like I said, being honest with everyone, people really appreciate that. And I'll just say, Unfortunately, we have a pulse on the community, and they do not want this type of business, in here. With the event business, a lot of everyone calls me. If I had like $20 for every call I get about opening an event venue, I would have like a lot of money, a lot of money. And again, the event venues, you have to have a certain type of zoning. So you want to make sure you know the different zoning codes, because the tenant might come after you. And that has happened to us. We've gotten tenants that way, that they've leased somewhere else, signed a lease somewhere, go to open a business and realize that the zoning won't work for their business. So that's very important to know as well. And if you have to go through zoning, and again, because we know the neighborhood and have a pulse on the community, well, I'll just be honest, like, listen, we know for sure the community is not going to go for an event venue at this place. And most people respect that, respect me telling the truth. Some people, push back, well, my venue is this, and I don't doubt that your venue is any type of way. I'm just trying to save you the headache of the future. You move in, you spend all of this money to get the business built out to suit, that's what we do. We specialize in building to suit properties. So we build it to suit for you, and then you can't even run the business. And now everybody's out of money. So before we go down that road, I'm just honest with everyone. And people, eventually, they might be upset, but they will appreciate that. So again, I can't stress that enough to make sure that you are honest. And then I ask budget too. What's your budget? This is on the commercial side. And same thing. Sometimes I get pushback, like, well, it doesn't matter. That, like I'll say, it doesn't matter. I don't have a budget. Okay, well, we have properties that are $1,200 a month, and then we have properties that are $12,000 a month. So which property, where do you fall in line? And usually when I put it that way, they sort of say, oh, okay, I get it. And then they'll say, all right, well, you know what? I don't want to spend more than $2,000 a month. Perfect, cool. All right. Well, this is what I have that will work for you. And as I'm talking to people, if we don't have anything that will work for them, and I know it's a business that we would, love to have or would lease to, I keep in contact with everyone. I started a waiting list. That's what I call it. And I'll just add them to our waiting list, get keep their phone number, their email, their maximum budget on file, so that when something becomes available, I can give them a call and say, hey, I remember you were looking at this space, but now I have this available. And that has worked. We've found probably about 5 or 6 tenants that way. Just staying in contact with them. Or there's been a couple times, there's been like 2 tenants that when they applied, their credit and everything wasn't that good. So they worked on their credit, they built everything up, and then they came back to me, we stayed in contact, and then they were able to lease with us. So that works too. Relationships, I learned early on in my career, first starting out, which wasn't even real estate, was that relationships build results. And I've used that in every single one of my careers because it's true. So just make sure you're always honest with everyone. Again, people appreciate honest. I would say read the comps to see what's actually selling or being leased in your area so that you can price it accurately. Most times we hit the mark with pricing. A couple times there's been properties that we list and it's been too low. And the reason why I know it's too low, because it's been like hundreds of people that email right away and submit applications and everything right away. So that means like, that's kind of low. If you don't have access to Bright MLS, which used to be Trend, the listing service, to see what the comps are. Another thing that you can use is called Rent-O-Meter. It used to be free, but now they let you use it a couple times before you have to start being charged. They start charging you to get more things. But you can basically, on Rent-O-Meter, you put in your price point, you put in your address, you put how many bedrooms, if it's a house or apartment, and the price that you're paying. And then it lets you know your rent is too high, it's just right, or it's too low. So that's a good tool to have as well. And that's really about all I can say. I'd rather ask more, answer questions and everything. So feel free to answer, shoot your questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. That was awesome. And if you attended the training program, you got a little sneak peek of that, but that was definitely a great look at everything and all thing tenants. So I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, you can use the Q&A tab and just type them in, and we'll ask them to Juwan. There are a few here and a few that I jotted down.
Okay.
So we can just get started.
Sure.
So we'll start with Jihad. He is asking, do I need a broker to sell a commercial property? Or to rent
Yes.
a commercial property? Yes.
Rent or sell. You don't necessarily need, you don't necessarily need a commercial broker if you want to rent a space in your commercial property. But if you are selling your commercial property, I would definitely recommend you hiring a broker. Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. Next is Will McCant, and he's asking,
Hi, Will.
He's asking, is 3 times the monthly income gross or net for a rental application?
I would say gross.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was easy. And he just typed back hi. Okay, and the last attendee question, unless more are submitted here, is from Danelle Brown, asking, how do you handle renters who fall on hard times? And we had a JUMPinar a few weeks ago about eviction alternatives and
Mm-hmm.
How that whole process goes, but maybe you have recommendations before it even gets to that.
So what we tell everyone is, again, be honest, be upfront. If you are having hard times, if you've come into a hardship, let us know. Let us know from the beginning so that we can try to work together to figure out a solution. And that's for anything. Now, if you just fell on hard times and you're not answering our phone calls, you're not doing, you're not responding to emails, you're not doing any of that, then we are less likely to work with someone like that, as opposed to someone that is letting us know what's going on. And and to be honest with you, even today, as I'm leasing properties, this is more commercial properties. Some people were about to sign a lease, and then this is no, we're still living in COVID times, unfortunately, but when things started opening back up, say like June, July, and they were ready to start their business, but then they're like, so what do you do if there's a shutdown again, or do I still have to pay rent? And I really can't answer that question. I mean, we're living in times that we've never seen before. So we don't necessarily have a COVID plan for tenants should they not be able to pay their rent. Like we're not. And as any business person, you're not going to tell someone, oh no, you have, just flat out say, no, don't pay your rent. It is, you just got to work with you just ask everyone to be upfront and to work with them. So I said it to say that some people did decide to not lease because they didn't have a game plan. They were like new businesses, and they knew that if their business opened up now and then was forced to shut down, they wouldn't have the money to continue to pay rent. So I mean, I respected that. I respect their decision with that.
Okay, great. And we did get a few more questions here. So the next is from Will. Again, he's asking, what's your advice on self-managing a residential rental?
Am I answering personally, or am I asking as as an employee? No. So for Philly office retail, we are unique that all of our staff has a duty. So everybody has a duty assigned. So I do leasing and marketing of a property, and then we have a property manager, we have an architect, we have a construction management. So everybody's job is specific, which makes it really great. But our property manager is excellent, and she makes sure that the tenants they have all the information they need. so forth and so on. Now, on a personal level, but again, that's multiple properties, like you need somebody to help you manage that. On a personal level, if there's just one or two or three or four properties or even five, whatever you feel you can handle, myself want to keep all my money. So and I have the time or I have the resources to be able to call someone and say, hey, can you go to my property at XYZ because this broke and I need that to be fixed? Or, hey, can you take a refrigerator down here because this needs to be fixed? Or I'm in Lowe's myself, picking up stuff. But it because it's manageable. So it really just depends on your own preference. If you don't, and I know people that have properties and they don't have the time. They don't have the time to go sit down municipal services. Well, nobody really can anymore. Although I will share this tidbit if you didn't know, because I had to do this myself. If you have to schedule anything with a permit or something down municipal services, if you call the 311 number, you will be on hold for about 2 hours or longer. I've done it twice, but they get you an appointment right away to go down there. And when you go down there, you'll get they'll text you maybe 5 minutes before and say, hey, it's 5 minutes before your appointment, or hey, your appointment is now. And then you get there and they're like, okay, it's your time to come up to go to, screen, whatever. They see you right away and you're in and out as opposed to down there for hours. So that's one of the positive things that came up. It's annoying to stay on hold that long, but it kind of helps. You don't have to waste hours sitting down in municipal services building. So again, it's up to you. If you have the time to be able to manage it, then I say, management. But if you don't, then I would recommend hiring someone to do so.
Okay, cool. And we have two questions here. I'm going to combine them into one. The first is, what is your price for using what is the price for using a broker for residential property? And then also Ty is asking, what is a typical fee of someone who's property managing a residential unit?
So residential brokers would hire a realtor because with residential is more so realtor, with commercial is more so broker. Ideally, the price is still about the same. The commission is between 2.5% to 3%, and the seller does pay the commission. So usually it would be 5 to 6% if you look at it that way, and then that 5 to 6% is divided among both brokerage firms. For property managers, I think the last time that I checked, I think they charge maybe 10 to 15% for to do the property management.
Okay, great. And last question on the docket here from Keith is asking, do you ever reward residential tenants for say great rental payment history, multiple renewals, or referrals? Is rewarding tenants a good strategy?
We do. So what we'll say is at certain times the tenant sends us a referral, then we'll give them a rental credit, like a $200 rental credit. So yes, we will do that.
Okay. What are some ways that a small a first-time developer, maybe with only managing one or two properties, is there any easy bonuses or easy perks you can give people?
You know what I've done in the past, the month of December, I know, one time I had a tenant and she had a lot of kids, so I let her not pay December's rent, and I told her to just use that for for Christmas for the kids. So it's really up to you and up to your own discretion. And ideally that's a good tenant that pays on time and everything like that, and doesn't give you a hassle per se. So yeah, it's really up to your own discretion how you do. But people appreciate that. People really appreciate that.
Great. Okay, so I have two questions myself that I want to ask, but people still have the chance to submit any questions. Just make sure you type them into the Q&A tab there. But I was wondering, so you mentioned both in the trading program and tonight that Craigslist is your go-to place for posting the properties. What are some of your tips for like a first time Craigslist users? Are there anything that you like, big red flags that you've always watched out for, or is it just kind of like a do it and you'll learn?
It's more do it and you learn. I don't put personal, well, I use my job email address and the job phone number. I tend, and that's another thing with this, you have to learn to set your own boundaries on, what you want to do. Some people have Google set up, like the Google phone number, so that they're not calling you directly. I don't have a Google number. I probably should, but I also don't freely give out my cell phone. If it's a strong tenant, I'm kind of picky. I'll just be honest. I'm picky on who gets my cell phone, because in the past people have abused it. And I kind of set my boundaries on because real estate is 24/7. It's definitely 24/7. So and I have a 7-year-old daughter, so I kind of set my boundaries on when I'm answering calls outside of normal 9 to 5 work hours. Again, if something comes up and it's important, like there's been times when Ken has texted me at 9 o'clock, at night, like, I just sent you an email, make sure you see this, follow up with that person. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm sending an email right then. And that first thing that morning, I'm on the phone with that person, because real estate is something else that when it's hot, you got to go with it, because it's not always hot. And so if you got a hot lead, you got to follow through and do whatever you can do to get that, from a hot lead to a lease signed, or basically like a lease signed.
Okay, great. Another question submitted from Donald here, asking, where do you go, or where can people go, and what service do you use to pull people's credit?
So we use, like I said, we use AppFolio, which is our property management system that also pulls credit. And you know what? Somebody just told me in the other class the other day, is it National Tenant Network? I think it might be National Tenant Network is another system that you can use to pull individuals' credit. They charge a fee, maybe like $30 something every time you pull, or they might have a system where you can pay something monthly and pull so many credit reports. Another thing you can do on a smaller end is look up the Philly Courts website, and on that website it will show, you can search the person by name to see if they have any judgments or anything like that.
Okay, great. Will again asks, what suggestions do you have for collecting rent from residential tenants? You can say what Philly Office Retail uses, and then what like a first-time developer could use as well.
So with Philly Office Retail, we have been pushing everyone to pay online via AppFolio. And they can set up their own. Once they become a tenant of ours, they'll get an email with a link to set up to make their payments online. We're trying to be as cashless, contact with cash, contact with individuals as possible. So if you have some type of management system, and again, AppFolio is really expensive, but it's for, I would say if you have 100 properties or more. There's other programs out there that do the same thing on a smaller scale. So I would research that. Also Zelle, Zelle is an option for collecting rent and everything without actually meeting in person with a person, or actually, touching cash. Some people still do, Dropbox if you want to have them mail their money order, or check in. For like a rule of thumb with Philly Office Retail, if you are just moving in for your security deposits and your first month's rent, you have to use a money order or a bank check. After you move in, then you can use personal checks, but we don't allow personal checks during your first time.
What's the reasoning for that?
What'd you say?
I said, what's the reasoning for that? I'm just curious. Why you don't?
Because they bounce.
Right, and not.
And that has happened. That's happened. We have accepted personal checks from individuals, and then their check bounces, and we gave them keys and they've moved in the unit, but we don't have any payment from them. So that's the reason for doing that the first time. And we have that on file. So should your check bounce, further on, we have money on file for you.
Okay. And someone just asked, what was the name of the property management system Philly office uses again? I said Appfolio, but how do you spell that? APP?
APPFOLIO.
All right, great. And another question here from Ty. He's has a bit of a situation for you to answer. I had a tenant move in on August 1st, and she paid first, last, and security. However, she recently told me that some PA COVID-19 laws says that landlords should not have accepted more than first month's rent. Do you know anything about this?
I haven't heard anything about that.
All right.
You know what? Another thing, I haven't heard anything about that, but let me tell you, with COVID-19, a lot of the, all of the grants and money and everything that became available. Ken actually just emailed me something else on Friday about new grants that became available. We every time something came out, I was posting it on our social media because I manage our social media pages as well. And Betsy, our property manager, was emailing it out, all the different resources. So yes, it's hard. We get it. It's hard for everybody. It was hard for us as a company. It was hard for us individual. This was something that was beyond our control. But there were different resources out there. That part about not accepting first, last, and security, no, because we accept, well, for the first time in a long time, we have not had any residential units, which is like great. We finally have one coming up in December 1st. But during COVID, I should stop saying that because COVID is still going on.
It's all right. We all want it to be over. It's a
I know. I want it to be over so bad. From March to June, or say more so like April, May, and June, we did have first, last, and security. So we did collect all three.
Okay, cool. So Ty, you might want to look and see if you can Google or find any information, but
yeah,
I've got nothing for you.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. Okay.
Tenants do try to get over. I mean, it is, every tenant is not a good tenant, and tenants do try to get over. So, you got to make sure that you do your own due diligence and own research to see like if stuff is actually true.
Okay. And just on that topic, Keith is asking, can you share any story, and you might not be able to, but can you share any stories about how you or POR has handled evictions and any takeaways from that experience?
We're very,
Yes.
we are very, I'm not saying we're not selective, but we basically go through everything with a fine-tooth comb before we get to the leasing process. Because it costs so much money to evict a tenant, commercial, residential. So on top of the headache of you not collecting rent from, this person, now you have to put out money to have a lawyer to actually evict them. Well, right now, we're even more tedious on our process because you can't evict anybody right now. I don't think it's been lifted. Like you can't do any, evictions. We have had tenants that have, we sent them notices and everything, and they've come through at the final hour making payments and was able to stay in the process, to stay in the unit. And we've had tenants that we've had to schedule lockouts and, go through that whole thing, as well. So we've done a broad range. But again, we tell everyone, just be honest. Like if you are falling on hard times, if it's hardships for anything, just let us know. Like, let's figure out a plan so that we don't have to get to that whole process of eviction, because it's not fun on anyone. And then, some people are at that point where, they don't care if they have the eviction on your credit, because it's going to go on your credit, and it's going to affect you later on down the line.
Right. Yeah. And I would recommend, Keith, if you haven't, you should check out the JUMPinar we did on eviction alternatives. That was, I think, 2 weeks ago or maybe 3. You can find that at jumpstartgermantown.com/jumpinars, and it's the recording of the session. And we dive into that even deeper than Jawan just did. Danelle Brown is asking, what is a lockout, and is that how is it different from an eviction?
So a lockout is, I hear it per se because I have not physically done it, but I believe it's all a part of the eviction process. So if I'm not mistaken, and if anybody else knows the process, they can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. But you get the eviction, and then you have the option to change the locks. And then the tenant has 30 days to get their stuff out. But once it gets to the lockout portion, then there's no coming back. Like you can't pay anything to get the unit back or anything.
Like seal on the eviction, kind of like.
Yeah, it's like seals the eviction. So the lockout means you have 30 days. And with that 30 days, we change the locks and you call us to make arrangements for us to meet with us and to get all your items out. That's how we do it.
Great. And yeah, Tamara just said, yes, that's correct. The sheriff department.
Right. Yeah, the sheriff department comes. Yep. So we usually had the sheriff. So when the sheriff department comes and then we have a representative, and it's usually like our head of maintenance there as well.
Okay. And I keep saying last question, but there's bound to be a couple more that trickle in.
Okay.
Thoughts on taking a Section 8 tenant versus a retail tenant in COVID times?
A retail tenant? What do you mean by retail tenant?
Here I can. It's a question from Will. So Will, I just allowed you to talk if you want to unmute yourself and clear things up.
Yeah. Hey, Jawan, how you doing?
Will, how are you?
Good to see you. No, I mean just like a regular tenant, like a market, not someone in the Section 8 program, just like a regular, retail tenant,
okay.
not in a subsidized program.
Got you. So at POR, we don't accept any vouchers. We're not Section 8 qualified.
Right.
We didn't go through the training to do so. So we don't do that on the PR on side. On a personal side, I have gone through the Section 8 class or whatever to be certified to lease to Section 8. But with Section 8, with dealing with Section 8, they do their own inspections and everything for the property. So you can lease to someone, but then they'll come in and make sure the property is up to standard, up to code per their standards. And if it's not, they will hold the money. They do inspections maybe like twice a year or something like that. So they will hold the money. But on the flip side of that, on the first of the month, the check is in your deposit, in your account every first of the month, pending there's, no issues or anything with it. But POR, we're not certified to take any vouchers.
Yeah, I was just curious, like with these times, with COVID and, the eviction moratoriums and everything going on, how, what your thoughts are, what your thoughts were on, the two different types of tenants.
Yeah, I mean, it really can be, it can be hit or miss with, any tenant. The tenant can be great on paper, moving in and everything, and then they get in and it's something completely different. Same thing. I know sometimes people sort of like shy away from dealing with Section 8 because they have a fear of what might come with the tenants. But personally, my fear with Section 8 is not so much the tenants, it's just the extra stuff that Section 8 puts on you to have requirements that they have for your property. So that's my reason for not really dealing with them.
I understand. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it looks like Andrew has his hand raised here. I hope that was intentional. Andrew, I just enabled your mic there.
Yeah, hello, how are you? Hey, Jawan, how are you?
Hi, Andrew, how are you?
Good, great seeing you again.
Yes.
Quick question. I think you mentioned something and I missed it. I apologize. There was something you mentioned about, like, I think your first check, you don't take personal checks, or you take, I just want to, maybe you can explain that a little bit to me, or what it was that you said. So I understand. Sorry
Oh,
about
yeah.
that.
No, that's fine. So for your first for residential, we require first, last, and security to move in. For commercial, we require first and two security. So it's three payments. It's just said different ways depending on if it's commercial or if it's residential. For those three payments, those first payments that you make, we don't allow you to use personal checks. You have to use, and I've just been telling everyone now to get a bank check, because I don't really want to deal with cash at all. So we require everyone to bring in a bank check or a money order. But after they move in, then they can pay via a personal check, and it's really just like dropping it off. Our office is sort of it's not closed down, but it is closed down. We try to limit as many people coming into the office as possible, just for safety. So we installed a drop box on one of our doors for people to drop off checks, but we push and push and push and push and push people to pay online because it's faster and it's easier to do. But if they have to pay with a personal check, then they can do that after they move into the property. And our reason for doing that is because we have allowed people to use personal checks to move in. We let them move in, gave them keys, and then the checks have bounced.
Great.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that is all we have. And I just want to, again, thank you so much, Joanne. That was really important.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. I really appreciate it.
Great. And just a couple housekeeping things before we close out here. Next week, we have Rashida Gray, who is
My soror.
she is the wife of Jacob Gray, who presented a few weeks ago. And that will be next week, October 26th. And you should see the registration invite coming out for that tomorrow. And then we have to be determined for the week after that. If you want to know more about our loan programs, like Adriana mentioned in the beginning, you can go to jumpstartgermantown.com or jumpstartphilly.com. And as always, if you want to see a recording of this session or last session, you can go to jumpstartgermantown.com/jumpinars. And not even just last session, every session we've done since March when the world ended. But basically. Yeah, and then another just a little special note for everybody who's here tonight. If you have any topics that you want to see presented at one of these JUMPinars, or any specific speakers in mind, please do let us know. And you can email myself, Derek at Philly Office Retail, or Angie at Philly Office Retail, or even just post it on the Facebook page. That works too. But we're always looking for speakers and different topics that you guys want to see and think will be helpful to your real estate education. So please do let us know. Any and all recommendations are welcome. So I think that's it for tonight. And just again, a final thank you to Joanne. And
thank you.
All right, everybody have a good night.
Okay, bye.